I could talk a little bit about how I decided to study abroad. I can tell you details of how I got here, but this is more the philosophical why. In 2017, which was 6 years ago, we went to Italy for about 5 weeks for my 50th birthday, and that was a trip that I had planned for 3 years and saved our money and planned up for it and organized. And really, one of my favorite things to do is organizing travel. Not that I could do it as a job, because I just like to research and study and not study. Well, yes, I'm going to be studying abroad, but I don't like to study travel. Research and explore and just find stuff to do for travel is my favorite thing, whether it's like, oh, we're going to be in such and such town or neighborhood. What can we do there? I like finding that kind of stuff out. Or just exploring new places, or saying to someone, hey, we're going to be in this area. What's there to do there? That's my favorite thing. And like planning and anticipating is 50% of the fun of doing what we're doing. So I'm excited about that. So 6 years ago, we went to Italy. That was an amazing trip. It was dreamy and wonderful. Honestly, I was so excited for the trip, and it ended up being 1,000 times even better than I expected. So I'm so grateful for that. And when we got home from that trip, I thought, okay, I've lived in Los Angeles since 1985. I came here to go to college and then to work in the film business. And I've lived here since 1985 I'll tell you, I lived in Seattle for about a little less than a year in 1991 and 92. That was lovely, but I had to come back down and work in the film business because that's what I wanted to do. Anywho, so I've lived here since 1985 and been grateful to have lived in this house. It's now been 25 years that I've lived in this house, and then we got to remodel it 7 years ago, a nice modest remodel. But so after that trip to Italy, and we've traveled before, it's not like it was my very first trip anywhere or anything like that, but there was something about that trip that just made me think, is this it? Are we just going to live in Los Angeles? Honestly, I'll tell you the story, and maybe I already have. We were driving, a few weeks after we got back from that Italy trip, we were driving down the 405 to IKEA in Carson to pick up some things, I don't know what. And as we were driving down the 405 and I was looking out at the city that I've lived in since 1985, I thought, is this it? Am I just going to live in Los Angeles for the rest of my life? And that's perfectly fine for lots and lots of people, but I thought, I don't think I do. I think I want to try somewhere else. I think I want to try something else. I want to not just be here in this particular house until I die, which is hopefully a long time in the future, by the way, but I can't even imagine. I didn't want to do that. So that was 6 years ago. And then Kurt and I talked about it on and off from 2017 until 2020. And I talked about moving to the Pacific Northwest, which is somewhere I've always really loved being, and I loved living there for that short time when I was there in Seattle. And I thought, let's make something happen. Let's talk about it. So Kurt was not quite as excited as I am, but the big idea, and we had no specific idea other than I want to live in the Pacific Northwest, but the idea was to move probably in like 2020, 2021, as we started talking about it in 2017. And in 2018, because of my job, we got to live in England for about 4 months. And that was really cool, and that was really lovely. And after that trip, I was even more on fire for not living in Los Angeles anymore and really loved living in England. And while we were there for 4 months, it wasn't really like, we knew we were coming back. We knew I had the job to finish up. We knew we were moving back to our house in Los Angeles. So it was, a temporary trip for that particular job. So there was some vacation-like feelings about it, It wasn't like we lived there. It wasn't like we moved there. So after we got back from that trip, I was really more on fire to move somewhere else and try somewhere else and, experience a different place in the world. And then the pandemic happened, and so the time frame for moving obviously got pushed back. But then we thought, well, it makes sense that Harper School goes until 5th grade, so why not? Because of the pandemic also, we couldn't really go anywhere. Plenty of people did, but it just didn't make sense for us at the time. So we said, okay, let's wait till Harper finishes 5th grade, because everybody will be going to middle school anyway, and then let's look into moving then. So that was on our minds for the last, from 2020 to 2021, 22. And then I started thinking about, I sort of had a crazy idea first, and I called it 6th grade gap year. It was really, for me, who's like not that wild and crazy. We don't camp. I don't think van life would be for us. We like a nice house with a bed and a couple of bathrooms. That's us. But I came up with this crazy idea of 6th grade gap year. And I thought, what if we lived in Italy for 3 months and, Connecticut for Maine for 3 months and Iceland for 3 months and, places like that. And then do kind of like a homeschool year of hands-on learning about geology and the world and cultures and history. And while I still love that idea, it wasn't very practical for the both of us, the three of us, because it's not quite our style. But then I thought, okay, well, what if we lived abroad for a year or two, just somewhere that could be stable and we could all live there together. And as we talked about it, the concern about foreign languages came up. Not for me, I'm not afraid of it. But I know just to have Kurt and Harper feel more comfortable to be in an English-speaking country. So then we talked about going back to England because we really enjoyed it and we have friends there. So last year, 2022, I started looking into how can you live in England legally. So I spoke to an immigration attorney in England last year, and I found out there are three ways that you can live in England legally. One, you can get a job and get a job visa through your employer, which we did 5 years ago. You can invest, you can come to England and invest £2 million, not dollars, £2 million, and then you can get a visa. And the third way is you can go to grad school and get a student visa. So I have been toying with grad school over the last 3-4 years anyway, and I thought, ooh, that's exciting, that's for me. So when I was speaking to the immigration lawyer, she said, you can get a job, £2 million. I'm like, well, I don't have £2 million lying around, and I've already been here on a job, and that's really not ideal in terms of the work I do, which is, working 12, 14 hours a day. Just didn't want to do that for this experience. So I said, yeah, gosh, grad school, that's a really intriguing option. And she laughed and said, every time I mention grad school to people, they go, grad school? I'm not going back to school. And I'm like, sign me up. So grad school became the thing. And then I can talk more about how I found the school and got all that done. But basically then it became, grad school. That's how we're going to do it. So that's how we're doing it. And that's how I was inspired to really, it's taken 6 years and one pandemic to figure out where we want to live, how we want to live. And so we're going to give it a shot. And right now with the grad school program, we can easily be there for minimum about 15 months. So it would take from this September to next September. And then on the student visa, you get a few extra months after your program ends. So we could be there through Christmas. But there's also potential to stay longer. There's a different kind of visa you can get. I could talk about that next time. But anyway, so we could be there up to 3 years or as little as, 15 months or so. So we'll see what happens. It's all going to be an amazing experience, and I can't wait to try it. And I'll talk about school in future episodes, because right now school is this very vague thing for me. I'm more concerned with getting a lease signed and getting all of our books and bookshelves into the garage and everything else into the garage to store, and then getting Harper applied to school, because her school is going to start about 3 weeks sooner than my school is going to start. And basically, like, once she and I get there, we're going to be applying for schools and see where she ends up. So that's going to be kind of a exciting little moment, because then she's going to have to get uniforms. So that's where we're at. That's how I got here in terms of the big idea of where we want to live and why we want to live there. And I'm excited. So one step at a time, one day at a time, figuring out what our next steps are in terms of as small things as fixing the window that broke the other day, and as big as how do we get the cats organized, even though we're mostly there. And then I can't even think of all the things. There's so many things to think about. But it's working. One step at a time, one little thing at a time. It's working. So another week to go. And then 3 more weeks and we're gone. Oh my gosh. All right. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.